Welcome to this week's episode of Bike Talk with Dave. I'm your host, Dave Mabel, and I'm thrilled to have you join us. I'm recording today's intro and outro on the bike again, mostly because it's so gorgeous out. Mid-60s, sunny, dry, perfect fall weather. And the next 3 days we're anticipating 3 inches of rain. So it's a day to get out and enjoy the trails. Been doing a little paved trail, a little road, a little single track. Not all that unlike the Core 4, where no surface is left untouched. Check it out. Who's ready for some Core 4 news? After a huge spike in riders and a super thank you to everyone for coming out this year, these guys jumped right back into the fire. It's no surface untouched again for 2024 because Core 424 has a sweet sound to it, no doubt. New routes, new distances, and a new you. That's right, y'all, they are mixing it up with more surprises and delights. New for 24 is the Core 40 distance. Just a bump up from the 20 mile and still has all the farmscapes and B roads and champagne gravel you'd expect from the folks at Core 4, just without the single track. They're telling us 60 is the new 50, miles that is. It's a no-surfaced, untouched, podium-eligible route with all the cats in addition to their marquee 100-mile event. It's the perfect blend of competition and community. We want Core 4 to be on your event calendar for 2024. Jump on Bike Reg today, snag your spot before this event reaches its cap. Come ride the wave and get more bodies on bikes. It's blazing hot action every year, and they'll keep the fire stoked all winter long with the 20, 40, 60, or 100-mile route. Core 424 has something for everyone. It's time for the next time. Let's go! Today's guest is another World Tour veteran. Done all 3 Grand Tours, Giro d'Italia, Tour de France, Vuelta a España, which was just won by fellow American Sepp Kuss, which is super cool. Peter Stetina has been around a hot minute and found himself on the World Tour level of cycling, racing in the biggest races around the world. He gave all that up to go live in a van and drive around the country doing gravel races. Put his own program together and was kind of the pioneer of the privateer programs. We're thrilled to have him on, and I hope you enjoy today's conversation with Peter Stetina. Peter Stetina, what a treat to have you on. Are you old enough to say legend? Can I call you a legend or no?
I would be honored, but I don't think I deserve that one yet. I'll take it.
Fair enough.
If you bestow it, I will take
10
it.
more years. We'll wait 10 more years.
Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Good. Well, now I'm doing really good.
Attaboy. Cheers.
Cheers.
I cracked open a Iowa State Legend beer brewed by Peachtree Brewing in Knoxville, Iowa.
Interesting.
And I cracked that one open because Iowa State won this weekend. And I don't know, $1 or 12 cents or $3, whatever, it's not their NIL, but it is the Jack Trice Foundation that supports black students at Iowa State. So I think that's pretty cool, and it's good beer.
That's
and
awesome.
I'm celebrating a victory by Iowa State.
That's awesome. The only Iowa beer that I have had, it doesn't really make its way to California, there is a super famous brewery and they have the King Sue and the Pseudo Sue.
That makes it all the way to California.
Occasionally, you'll find it in a tap room, and if you do, you know to grab it. It's kind of legendary status. And when I actually was at Schwamigan 2 weeks ago, like we found it in a liquor shop there, so I was drinking a Pseudo Sue post race.
That's
Phenomenal
I
beer.
appreciate hearing that. It's from Toppling Goliath is
Yes,
the brewery,
they have like some collaboration
and
with a museum or something, right? Or something weird. Like they brew with a museum or something, or out of it, or
I don't
yeah.
know. I wouldn't be surprised. They brew. That's a big brewery in Iowa.
Hmm.
I don't know if we consider them local anymore
Mm-hmm.
or craft, if you know what I
Yeah.
mean. If you're finding it in California, but
Mm-hmm.
it's definitely good beer. Did the Single Speed USA last a year ago, August, and it was in Decorah, which is where Toppling Goliath is.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh. You know the Yeti cooler that is like the size of a coffin?
Yep.
It was full of King
Oh
Sue.
God. Well, that's yeah.
Yep.
Like you were saying before the recording, that's one way to start a night and finish it.
It, yes.
um,
Well, a lot of people did about 400 yards of that race and then just stopped and never left the side of that cooler. It was
Perfect.
a crazy day.
Perfect.
It was a
Yeah.
crazy day. Well, what are you drinking?
I have just tried it now. First sip. It's called Ardent Flame by Ghost Town Brewing out of Oakland, California, East Bay. This is a barrel aged smoked Kolsch. Yeah, Ghost Town is one of my favorite breweries right now. They have this weird like necrology theme. Everything is like tombstone and death and rotting corpses and stuff. But everything they touch is some of the best. Especially they're mostly IPA heavy, and their IPAs are insane. However, I saw this one sitting there. It's 5%, and they barrel aged smoky flavor of a lighter Kolsch. So, and I'm not surprised it's done really well. So, yeah.
And
Yeah, it's smoky in a pleasant way though. So,
in a pleasant
yeah.
way?
Yeah, it's just kind of like that it's that lighter Kolsch flavor, but there's definitely like a little bit more like interest interest behind it.
Well, I'm glad to
Yeah.
hear it's good. I've had some smoky
Hmm.
beers that were not good. They
Mm.
kind of turn me off when I hear the word smoky,
Oh, interesting.
but I'm glad to hear that's good. So, cheers, mate.
Cheers. Yeah.
Good to
If
see
you
you.
find your way out to California, Ghost Town out of Oakland is can't go wrong with those guys. I turned Ted King onto
I
them
will look for it.
last winter. So,
Oh, nice. All right, dude. Let's talk about. I want to introduce you a little bit, and one of the reasons I'm excited to have you on is the gravel national championships were just held.
hmm.
The IMBA or not IMBA, my bad. UCI World Gravel Championships are going to be in a week and a half or two
Yep.
weeks. Gravel's made a evolution into this, I don't know, world of recognition, if you will. And dude, you like, I, I don't know. I don't want to die. Like this isn't all about you and your history as a bike racer, but you walked away from a world tour life to race gravel, and I find that super intriguing. And gravel is in this huge state of evolution and growth, and I just want to get your perspective on that. But
Yeah.
before we do, I want to talk a little bit about you and where you came from and what got you on a bike and then leaving the world tour for Unbound, etc.
Yeah.
So yeah, when did you really start riding a bike and who influenced you?
Um, I grew up in Boulder, Colorado, born and raised, and cycling is it's kind of mainstream there. It's one of the places where it's really easy to find a bike. And my dad was a pro, my uncle was a pro, and especially out where you are in the Midwest, there the Stetina name kind of has a bit more weight behind it. However, they never. Sorry, I have an echo now too. I don't know why that's going on, but I'll push through it. Sorry, my apologies.
It's annoying, isn't it?
Yeah, it's all good though. So I never knew that they would, or sorry, they never pushed me into cycling. It's not like it was like a guarantee. A lot of people think like, oh, Pete's a Stetina. Of course, he ended up being a bike racer. Couldn't be farther from the truth. I was just doing every sport possible growing up, soccer, running, especially, and I was mountain biking on for fun. I was going to these.
In Boulder?
Yeah, yeah.
I lived in Boulder in the summer of '87,
Okay,
which I want to talk to you a little bit
that was
about
the year I was
because it's
born.
kind of
I'm
funny.
an '87
It
kid.
was the year you were born, Boulder,
Yeah.
Colorado. So, yeah, I was still there in August,
Mm.
actually. So, yeah, I was celebrating your birth. But not mountain biking. Like, mountain biking was so new, it was not welcome
Mm.
in Boulder,
I
Colorado.
don't think it still is welcome, but
Really?
yeah, Boulder. There's a lot of old Boulder money and almost mafia, so to speak, and people just hikers that are protecting the trails and standing on this pedestal of not making an impact on nature, but really just hating on any other users. There's a lot of other places in Colorado to ride a mountain bike, but cycling is very healthy in Boulder, and there are a few decent trails, but very few and far between. But growing up there, it's little short track races at the research parks. Growing up as a kid, weeknight races, and then you have all summer long the mountain bike circuit, the old Norba races in Keystone and Vale, and Winter Park had its own series. So that was kind of where I fell into it. It was mountain biking, kind of like NICA these days with the high schoolers. It's more play than just road cycling, which is exercise. And I
Hmm.
started to race for fun, just dabbling in it because I had a soccer teammate that was really into mountain biking. So we just started bringing our bikes to soccer tournaments and going on mountain bike rides in different places afterwards. And he was on the YMCA team for a junior YMCA team for the 24 Hours of Moab at the time. And I thought that was super cool. So I joined on as well. Um, so yeah, and then I started doing some races. And once I kind of got the bug and I was ultra competitive, just that's my nature. Then I had kind of the family backbone to lean on. My uncle working for Shimano at the time. Uh, there's always used parts. Shimano kind of has this like secret like return bin. That's like people didn't
Mm.
like it because it came with a scratch, even though it works just fine or something. So I was always able to get some Shimano parts on the cheap. And then my dad, just knowing training and riding and all that. So
Yeah. I started racing like just as your uncle and dad were kind of phasing out,
mm,
but I mean, they were legends, man. They were, but I say they, Wayne and Dale, but I knew they had a couple other brothers that rode and raced.
mm,
Wayne and Dale are the two I knew, your dad being Dale,
yep.
but freaking national champions. And I think it was Red Zinger then, but the people remember the Coors
Oh
Classic.
yeah.
I think, didn't they each win twice?
My dad won 2 or 3 times. He holds the record for wins, along with, I think, Davis. I'm not sure, but he's one of the few people that have multiple titles to his name. My dad was more of the flyweight climber. I'm very much built like him. My uncle was more of like a one-day racer, like really good in a reduced bunch sprint, kind of like national championship races, like one-day classics type of thing. So they kind of were able to play off of each other each way. I don't think my uncle won a Coors Classic, but he had way more national titles and one-day titles than my dad. So
Ah,
yeah, but they were definitely kind of
that's
like
cool.
that dynamic duo brother in the '70s and early '80s.
For sure. I mean, they were idols of mine as I kind of entered in that world and became a,
Mm.
young super fan, uh, which is I just think super cool. Um, do you know if they would have raced the Morgul? Remember the
Oh yeah.
Morgul Bismarck? That was a stage in the Coors
Yep.
Classic, but there was a 1 day race. Uh, I just about said out here in Boulder, as if I'm there, in Boulder, and oh man, I wonder if they were there the year I was there. 87, would they have still been racing at all?
My dad wasn't racing by then. Wayne was, I think. Uh, I know they've raced the Morgul though, at least during the Coors Classic, or the Zinger. And it's funny. I think they're. I know my uncle's an extra. I think my dad might be as well in the American Flyers movie when they're racing on the Morgul. They're actually just kind of
For
like
sure.
bodies in the Kevin Costner show. um, but yeah, no, the Morgul is a legendary circuit in Boulder, and I actually even got a. They had a small stage race in Boulder when I was a junior that I got to do a time trial on the Morgul as well. So definitely hallowed roads out there.
Yeah, definitely hallowed roads. It's changed a lot since the 80s, a
Mm.
lot more built up. You felt like you're out in the middle of nowhere when you'd go do a couple laps of the
Oh, it's all
Morgul.
suburbia now out there, so it's not as good of a road loop as it
Yeah,
used to be. But
yeah. That wall, that was something to climb, huh?
hmm
It was like this, you had a false flat climbing up to it, and then it just gets steeper and steeper and steeper, and
yep,
finish line's way up there.
yeah, exactly. That was relentless. That was a really brutal one. The wall.
Yep. Um, do you do you have any memories of, I don't know, old bike days? I mean, obviously you
Um,
were born in 87 and dad was done racing full time then, but did
yeah,
you keep in touch with people? Did you know any of the old, I mean, a lot of guys were Boulder area as you
yeah.
were growing up.
Um, growing up, we didn't seem like a cycling family. Like my dad never flaunted it. Like I think all his leaders' jerseys and trophies were in the attic in a duffel bag. My uncle was the one that stayed in the industry more and like lived and breathed cycling, lives and breathes currently. But we just the tour was always on every summer and stuff, and kind of being the part of that OG Boulder cycling scene that kind of made Boulder the place. There was like a group and a community of kind of that old guard. Mike Eisner, the race organizer, Davis Finney, my dad, Scott Berryman is a accomplished track sprinter, and all these guys like they all kept in touch. Todd Gogolski, who was doing announcing for a while, so these were all kind of regular pass-throughs during my childhood of just like my dad was going for a ride with these guys on a Saturday, or we'd go over to someone's house for a dinner, and so yeah, I mean they were part of growing up. Um,
They're part of the foundation
exactly.
that leads you to where you are today, which is pretty cool. You know, if we look back at US cycling and we talk about in the 70s, like nobody considered even the possibility of going to the Tour de France.
Yeah.
And then I want to say it was George Mount was the first to break that barrier, and John Howard made his way over to Europe, and I mean those guys were really laying the framework for U.S. cycling to break into European racing. And then I don't know, Eddie B shows up in the U.S. and
hmm
starts training Finney and Gogolski and a little kid named Greg LeMond, and that whole era that really broke into European cycling. And I started racing in the 80s, and it was crits, a couple of road races, and if we could find a stage race, then it was lucky us. And I'm talking locally.
hmm
Uh, the Tour of the Dairyland
hmm
was around then, but which isn't really a stage race, but it was a multi-day thing. Um, but that was it. Like there, mountain biking was just invented, so mountain bike racing was few and far between. Cyclocross is like, what's that? Uh,
Yeah.
Gravel, like we avoided gravel like the plague. So it was road racing.
Yep.
Is that how you ended up? Because that's all there was in the world of road racing, or
Yeah.
was that as an American cyclist who's talented, is that just where the aim is?
I was definitely a product of the Lance Armstrong era. I was a junior when he was on his tour run. The epic battles of Ulrich versus Armstrong and all that. Like that was everyone wanted to be a GC rider, and so that's naturally where I think you transitioned growing up in the '90s and the early aughts was the competition, the prestige, the career potential was not in mountain bike anymore. Mountain biking had kind of busted stateside, and there was this golden era in road, and it was really easy to just kind of fall into the cycle. I remember doing a road race or a crit as a 17-year-old or a 16-year-old, and I won $100 in the Cat threes or something, and I was like, there's that light bulb of like, I can make money doing this. Like $100 is a lot when you're 16 years old, I mean, it's still a good pay, and so it was just kind of if you were really competitive and talented, the pipeline was into the road. Um, and I will back up a second. You were just asking about stories, and the mountain bike thing brought it up. I think there's for as little like nostalgia on cycling that my dad held, I have two vivid memories of uh, him being a little upset with us just being bratty kids. And one was as mountain biking started, he was one of the early adopters. He did some of the first mountain bike races, and he had this old red first generation Ritchie hardtail, like what they were first racing mountain bikes on. And that kind of stayed in our garage for years. I rode it to high school every day when it wasn't snowing. Went to my younger sister, and she got it stolen. She like didn't lock it up or something because it was just like her like school beater bike. And then once it actually got stolen, he was like, "Kate, you realize what this was, don't you?" Like, goddamn it, He never told us like during like be careful with this thing. So now there's like some hippie bike thief in Boulder with like a piece of cycling history that he's riding around on. He's probably rattle canned it. And the other was as I was 16 and just doing like the weeknight races. There's always like the Tuesday night crits or whatever. Um, I rifled through his. I didn't have a jersey. I wasn't on a team yet. You're just a junior racer, so I rifled through his bag of jerseys, and one of the few that fit me was this Golden Leaders jersey from the Zinger. Um, I think it was the Zinger, but it was a Golden Leaders jersey, and he was so small and like so in shape during that time. It was like he had to fit into like an extra small jersey or something. So it fit me as a kid, and I crashed that thing so hard, and I shredded it to pieces in a crit. And I think there was a tear shed there.
Those are
It's like I'm
two
glad you're okay,
worthy
but like
tears.
that one meant
You
something.
just ruined that great jersey.
Yeah, yeah.
That's awesome. How is your dad? Can I ask? He was in a accident 10 years ago, and
Yeah.
I saw he had gotten back on a bike after that, but it was a pretty freaking serious accident. And uh, I
Yeah.
know the cycling world was concerned about him for sure.
Uh, Unfortunately, that's not a story with a happy ending. He's alive since he tried to get back on the bike early days. He's had some mental backslides. For those who don't know, he was in a car bike incident on his bike, and he has a traumatic brain injury, a pretty severe one. He's pretty handicapped, and he's mentally degraded, so he needs permanent help, and he's pretty difficult to get along with. We still have somewhat of a relationship, but it's really when the time is right and needed, depending on the day with him. So, The brain, it's not like a body that just a broken bone heals linearly, it just heals and fuses and gets better. In the brain, there's ups and downs, and then eventually there's a plateau. And his plateau came pretty early. So we've kind of hit the point a decade on where I don't think it's possible for him to gain much more unless there's some new crazy science that comes out. But part of his injury is that he will refuse any medication or external help. So we're kind of at an impasse, unfortunately. So,
Well, let him know that there's a bunch of old guys out here who remember him fondly and wish him and you and your whole family the best
Thank you.
as he marches through each day.
Yeah, the silver lining is, it's pulled our whole. When something like that happens, the rest of your family gets much closer. My sisters and I are much closer post Dad's crash than we were before. So,
Well, I'm sure he would be happy and proud of that for sure. That he was able to bring you guys together in a unique way.
yep, yep.
Sometimes it takes weird stuff, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, thank you for saying that.
All right, back to you and riding a bike. I want to hear, like, how did you end up heading to Europe? How'd you end up at, I mean, I know you didn't win the Tour de France but you were freaking awesome. And you ended up riding the all three Grand Tours and really having a great career. How did you end up getting to that level?
Mine was a very classic, like, talent development pipeline story. I was growing up in Colorado and I was winning races as a junior in the Pro 1-2s and stuff. And Colorado's a very competitive scene. And it was right as Jonathan Vaughters was leaving Europe and starting this little team called 5280 Subaru with 3 under-23s and 3 juniors. I was 16 at the time. So I hopped on that. Got a free bike, got some clothing. They sent us to the Tour of the Gila and to national championships for juniors. And, you kind of fall into that. And then you kind of get the invite from, USA Cycling to go over to Europe and, cut your teeth that way. Because the only way to learn how to race against the Europeans on those is to just throw yourself in, just straight into the deep end. It was kind of a sink or swim mentality back then. And it still is somewhat, but especially during my junior and under 23 years. It was just ship them all to Europe and see who can hack it and who wants to go home, really.
That's I respect that. I remember Alexei Graywall, 1984 Olympic champion. He was like, "Nope, I'm out." He came home. He didn't dig the European scene, so it is hard.
And I was
Do
like
you remember
that.
your first trip?
Oh, yeah. They brought us to Belgium. And I was this little kid from Colorado. I couldn't, I was an uphill rider still. I was a climber. And they were just, they had us in a bunch of like northern French classic style races and kermesses in Belgium. And I was just getting my shit kicked in. And I flew over there and I'd never been abroad before. Like all of a sudden I land in Belgium and no one told me about time change, so I'm
Oh
just like,
boy.
oh my God, it's morning. Like I didn't even sleep on this plane. Like I just remember the jet lag of all jet lags and stuff and just being so zonked out. The culture shock was deep the first trip. And I do remember thinking, even racing there for a few years, I kept, getting brought back, but it was like, oh, if this flat, windy racing is what racing in Europe is like I don't care. Like I like the Tour of Utah. I like the Redlands Classic. Like I'm gonna, go race in the US and, do these races that I enjoy more. And finally USA Cycling brought my class to some hilly races in Italy and Spain. I think there was some hesitancy given kind of that dark era of cycling. It was like, with doping and all that, like our kids aren't even going to hold a candle to guys going uphill in Italy and Spain. Like there's no reason to bring them there. But, I was in this class with TJ Van Garderen and myself and Alex Howes and a bunch of these pros who are just starting to age out now, but we were kind of making it. So they brought us there, and we had a little bit of success and a lot of fun. I was like, oh, okay, well, this is what stage race, like I can stage race. I like this. So that kind of gave me a bit more motivation. But I mean, even like thinking about gravel is like, I think I always enjoyed coming back and doing, those Tour Utahs and the Redlands. Like I always loved racing stateside.
So you were, I don't know, 8 years or so over there on the World Tour stage.
10, yeah.
10 years. What'd you like about it?
I was I graduated all the way through Vaughters Slipstream, what is now EF program. So I was their original junior rider, and every year the team kind of got bigger, signed some higher profile riders, and I was just old enough and quick enough to kind of make the cut. So they kept bringing me and bringing me. And eventually I made it to the World Tour team as I aged out of under 23s. So, I was kind of their pipeline rider. And that was really nice for some of their sponsors. It was, look, we took this little kid from Colorado and we brought him up internally all the way to the World Tour. And they really liked that. And I did 4 years on the World Tour with them from 11 to 13, 11, 12, 13, no, yeah, 2010 to 2013. And then I went on to BMC after that.
What'd you like about those long tours, long stage races?
I was just I love the climbs and the harder the day the better. Those attrition based races is where I really seem to excel. I was never the best positioner, pack fighter, jostler, but I on the stuff where it was just relentlessly physical taxing, like that's where I kind of seem to break through. So I got to do my first Grand Tour, the Giro in 2011. And I think I was like 21st or something as a young rider.
That's
And
awesome.
it was just kind of, I didn't really have a bad day. I didn't crack. And so all of a sudden, that kind of became my thing as like a climbing domestique for the team leaders.
Did you have a favorite Grand Tour?
Oh, I mean, I'm really glad I did the tour twice, but because it's the big show, but it's so stressful. Like it's really, it's not crazy fun when you're in it. It's because it's the big show is what's intoxicating about it. But the most beautiful Grand Tour is the Giro, hands down. It's just the passion, the the fans around it, the scenery, the Italian Dolomites are the coolest mountain range on earth. I still stand by that. I've hiked through the Himalaya, the Andes. The Dolomites are just so dramatic and craggy and spiky and yeah. The Giro's kind of I think that's the coolest Grand Tour. But I was physically best in Spain, just hot weather, steep climbs. So
Hmm. Uh, Sep made Spain relevant.
we're
How fun was
that
that to
was
watch?
yeah. I got Volta fever like everyone, and yeah, Sep is God. He's so impressive, and I remember racing with him or against him, but we shared some years on, world championships teams and a couple of Vueltas in the same peloton. And I remember a vivid thought in 2018, actually thinking, he's such a magical climber. Like, I don't know if he'll ever get the chance or I'll ever put it together, but like, I remember vividly thinking like, he is the modern Andy Hampsten, like kind of this offbeat, soft-spoken guy just doing his own thing, his own trajectory, but just this eagle on a bike, just flies when the road goes uphill. And he just proved it, you know.
He
Really
did.
fun to watch.
And super nice.
Yes.
Seeming super
Yes.
nice. Andy Hampsten was super nice. I met him in the 1986 Coors Classic. We went out to watch a few days. I got laughed at by Bernardino, and Lamont said, "Oh, thanks," when I told him congrats on the tour. And Andy sat on flower bed thing at Copper Mountain and chatted with me for 5 minutes.
Awesome. Yep.
So
Another one of the Boulder
there's all
Mafia.
my.
Andy's a Boulder
He's
OG too. Yeah.
You're right. He is a OG for sure. So, dude, like, how did you come to leave that world and go to Unbound? I'm looking. You were racing in the Grand Tours in 2019.
Hmm.
Of course, 2020 is a weird year anyway.
Hmm.
But around then, like, what did we have? We had Unbound, we had Mid South, um, uh, Gravel Worlds was a thing. I don't feel like gravel, even, what was that, 4 years ago,
Yeah.
was what it was today.
Oh, not at all. It's the
I mean,
shift
I
has been
can't
monumental.
imagine being in Europe, racing at the highest level, and saying, I think I'm going to go over and race in Kansas
Yeah.
and make a living doing that.
Well, the making a living wasn't really the idea. Growing up mountain biking, I still loved riding off road. Growing up in Colorado, all the mountain roads are dirt roads. So, we'd always ridden gravel. I think my first ever road race was this thing called the Boulder Roubaix, which was on dirt roads around the north of Boulder. Um,
Hmm.
it and it's not a quick mind flip, is what happened to me. Basically, now living in Northern California since 2011, there's this series that you might have heard of called the Grasshopper Adventure Series out here. They've been going for 25 years. They weren't gravel races, they were adventure races. You took whatever bike made sense, whether it was a mountain bike or a cross bike or a road bike, and you'd be on pavement, but all of a sudden you'd hop off and go through a stream crossing that you'd have to ford on your bike and up a dirt hill. And, so I was doing these gravel races for fun and training because they were just like happening in February and March if I was home, and it made sense to hop into something a little harder than just training by yourself. And a friend locally happened to, in 2018, he was like, Pete, like, you should look at this thing called the Belgian Waffle Ride in San Diego. Like, it's like a hopper, but times 100. It's nuts, and I kind of looked into it, and it sounded really fun. So as I was redoing my contract with Trek at the time, I was on Trek Segafredo the last 4 years of my World Tour run. Um, I built it into the contract with my agent. We were renewing, and I said, like, hey, like, I really want to do these things. Like, I want to do some of these gravel races. I think it makes sense for you guys. Like, show up. It's like a Grand Fondo or whatever. Like, I'll, be public and enjoy, but like, I'll also get personal satisfaction out of it. So in my contract, I actually had written in that I could do the Belgian Waffle Ride, Unbound, and the Leadville mountain bike race. Um, and so in 2019, I did those while doing my full World Tour calendar. Um, and it was from those experiences, I won the BWR. I was second at Unbound to Colin Strickland, and I was fourth at Leadville, I think. And the the light bulb just clicked. It was like, oh my gosh, like this there's something here. There's a magic recipe, and I think I can do this full time. And I haven't had this much fun racing my bike in ages. Um, and there's a whole other slew of things that happened before that. There's my dad's accident. There's my own broken leg in 2015, where you know a lot of teams wrote me off, and I might have never learned to walk again. And you realize through these experiences, you know you're one way and you're just chasing a result and trying to make the tour team and fully invested in that monk lifestyle in Europe. And then certain things happen to you as you age, and you realize who's in your corner and who's just there for convenience and what makes you happy. And I think it was a product of that also that just made me want to chase a more relatable way, of riding my bike as a living. I won't lie in that I was becoming a little disillusioned with the world tour. Um, it's very monotone, the life. It's very selfish. And it started to grate on me a little bit. I got a little sick of team politics. You have good friends for a few years through a contract cycle, and then all of a sudden it's time to talk numbers. And it's just ruthless and it's dishonest at times. And I think it was just a well-rounded fed upness too, and seeing this opportunity stateside where I could be home with my wife, do races that I enjoy, be a person that races a bike instead of a bike racer that just happens to be a human, which is kind of what the World Tour has become at this point. You know, it's so streamlined and so like perfect, and all the marginal gains and all that. So it was just wanting a greener. The grass is always greener on the other side, right?
Yeah.
And seeing the moment, and it was honestly lucky timing too with where gravel's gone.
Well, uh, it it was exactly as it launched into the stratosphere as
Yep.
far as popularity and becoming the American thing.
Yeah.
Was that a scary jump? Was it scary to not sign?
100%. Oh yeah, I had no idea where this was going. It was, I think this makes sense, and it wasn't just a leap of faith though. It was a calculated step. It, you know, I was, you know, testing the waters with some contacts, saying like, I think I want to do this. You know, would you support me if I went for this? Some friends in the industry, you know, Sportful, Cliff Bar, Canyon, and Shimano, and it was kind of this unanimous, yeah, like let's try it. That's new and different and fresh. And so it was once I kind of had that security net that I was able to kind of go, okay. And it was a decision. It kind of eventually became, and I kind of, I guess, naturally, even if I unintentionally pushed myself into this decision, in that the World Tour wasn't happy to accept gravel yet. It was me and the EF duo of Lockie and Alex Howes doing their thing,
Right.
and I was doing it with Trek, and all the other World Tour teams in Europe, the traditionalists, were just like, what the hell? These guys are just playing around in the dirt and drinking beer, and so
Cheers.
cheers as I do this now. I mean, I guess they were a little bit right, but but it kind of
Yeah, but you're smiling and laughing.
exactly, and it kind of just became this moment where it was like no team was willing to take me on to moonlight in gravel. So you know, I had these feelers out saying, I think gravel makes sense. Let's do this. And any team my agent talked to was like, yeah, we're interested in Pete if he doubles down in Europe and just stays like a Grand Tour climber. But we don't want any of this gravel bullshit. You know, and
Huh.
so it really became a decision time for me. And as soon as I had, you know, some that safety net of a few partners willing to take this leap of faith with me, I went with that. And it's the best move I've ever made in my career. I can say that now.
So, I mean, hindsight's 2020, right? So, did you make a living your first year, or did you like scrape by and live the dirtbag lifestyle? Like
I was
where
okay.
were you on? Like it was
I
okay?
was okay. It wasn't, you know, by any means the highest contract I ever made on the road, but you know, I also had years on the road as a neo pro or coming back from my broken leg when I was on minimum wage, which in the world tour is pathetic. I mean, you can make more working at McDonald's than you can as a world tour cyclist, which is still the whole business of pro cycling is it's frustrating. And that's a whole nother podcast.
It is. It's weird.
But you know, I was in the middle because I came to it with a very a business mindset. I said, "Hey, no one's really racing gravel professionally yet. There's something here. I'm going to be maybe the first gravel pro. Like, I'm gonna go all in on this though. Like, I can't have a side hustle at a cafe or something. Like, I have a family. I have a mortgage. Like, I need to just I got to cut even. I got to pay my bills. And there's just a responsible way to talk to a potential sponsor because you know a lot of the industry just like, oh yeah, we'll support you like with product. And you know, I was able to come with a very nice way of saying, yeah, but I need some cash to make this work. And if if you broach it the right way, you can cobble it together. And so I kind of started what I called a privateer program at the time, and now it's kind of funny. It's become like an industry term, but
For sure.
the idea was basically cobble together somewhere from 5 to 10 sponsors for there's some headliners with more, and there's lower levels that's just 1, 2, 3K. But if you put enough of it together, then you're talking, and this is not like my example, but you just think of like a very basic, like if you get 10 sponsors in at $10,000 each, you're making 100K, and the difference is you have to fund all your racing out of that. I'm my own business, so I have to do the travel, the registrations, the lodging, all of that comes back out of it. So it was a jump into the deep end in terms of running a small business at the same time.
Yeah, no doubt. Now, I got to imagine that the number of days racing has decreased huge. Like, how many days racing did you do in 2018 versus 2023?
The number is much lower, but it's the same in terms of like a logistical hurdle in that,
Really?
well, I mean, I think there's like one or two gravel stage races. There's not many. There's the Oregon Trail, which is 5 days in Bend, and there's like a 3 day stage race in Idaho, and that's about it. Like most of these gravel races I do are 1 day races. So
Right.
I'm basically a 1 day racer now, but if I do 30 race days a year, I do 30 races a year, I'm still traveling 20, 30 times, 30 weekends a year. And in road racing, you do a grand tour. That's 21 days like that. So the actual travel is the same. Like I'm racing almost constantly from late January until mid October. The season is the same length. It's just the actual pinning the number on your back is, yeah, about a quarter of what it is normally. Stage races, you get so much bang for your buck with that.
Yeah, right. I That makes sense. Is it easier now to put your budget together and meet that budget than it was in 2019, 2020? I'm going to
Yeah.
use 2020. I know it
Well, that was my first
exploded,
year.
but you
Yeah.
had to be prepared for it.
Well,
You went in, it was until March, so your season had begun.
I did. And
What was it? It was a Mid-South. Mid-South,
yeah,
it had all exploded.
yeah, there was a grasshopper and two grasshoppers and then mid south, and then everything stopped. And looking back now, I mean, I that pandemic was a very beneficial thing in terms of my career because it forced me to learn business. Like I all of a sudden I had sold all these sponsors on I'm going to race all these gravel races. Like, I'm pretty much a sure bet for a podium and, experiencing all these events and and being an ambassador for you at these events with thousands of people. And all of a sudden that's not available. And I felt guilty. I was like, how do I give these sponsors an ROI, a return on their investment for believing in me and going out on this branch into the unknown when no one's ever done this before? So I had to get creative real fast. And luckily, the rest of the bike industry was thinking on the same terms. They're like, what do we do? And so, I'm really privileged that I got to learn from some brilliant marketing guys over at Canyon and all my sponsors in that, how do we pivot? What do we do next? And I hustled in the pandemic. I didn't sit and play video games. I started, championing these FKTs and stuff and these other ways to compete and bring, attention for my partners, but also stay competitive in an alternate way. The pandemic showed that the human race is very, uh, very creative. We can come up with a lot of things. We can pivot. And I mean, I went to Zwift and I started leading Zwift gravel rides. I had they mocked up a Canyon Grail with a double decker handlebar avatar that you could have in Zwift for these Tuesday morning rides with Pete and all this stuff. Like I said yes to everything. And so in that way, I again was thrown into the deep end of marketing, like just understanding and kind of how it reacts and relates. And that was a blessing in disguise for sure.
How many FKTs did you nail, and what was your Everesting time? Because you had to have done an Everest.
I never Everested. I just couldn't get excited on going up and down the same damn hill.
I'm
I
with you
talked
on
with
that.
Shimano about it, and they started going into the efficiency of it, but I was like, yeah, no.
No, never did it.
Yeah, I like the idea of K2ing more. Have you heard of K2ing?
I'm guessing it's steeper and
It's
deadlier.
it's the elevation of K2, so slightly less than Everest, but instead of the Everest rule is you have to do the same climb. For some reason, like
Uh
that's
huh.
the arbitrary rule that the keepers of Everesting made up. K2ing is you're supposed to do a different hill to accumulate your 28, 29, 27,000 or whatever feet. So you can get a lot more creative and actually just make a badass route.
Dude, you could just like live in Boulder and do
Yeah,
that. Like, just head west
yep. Yeah, just go up and down
and keep
every
riding.
canyon. Yep.
Yep,
You
that'd
just
be
can't repeat
awesome.
the same road was the rule. And Lockie did one actually. I remember seeing Lockie do a K2, and I was like, damn. Um, but
Geez, from Boulder, that'd be really cool.
yeah,
Like, I rode all those canyon roads
yeah.
that summer of '87, and that'd be really fun. You just go up to peak,
Yep, back down.
go off, drop down, go up in the next
Yep.
one, and
Tack Mount Evans in there to get a lot of vert at once. And
finish at Mount Evans.
um,
Which, by the way, we share beyond the Leadville and Schwamigan start line. I did Mount Evans in 1987, the year
awesome.
you were born,
That's a
when your
beautiful
mom
climb.
was 3 weeks 3 weeks before you were born. It was in your honor.
Oh, thank you. um,
Cheers.
yeah.
Um, FKTs.
So my big goal was the white rim, and I'm still really proud of that one. There's a fancy video out there if anyone wants to look up Stetina white rim FKT. That was kind of the most popular route, and it was the most competitive. Payson McKelvin had it, Quinn Simmons took it, Keegan took it over Quinn. So there was already it was an established thing. And I made that kind of my big sporting goal, knowing it was a fast time to beat. In the meantime, I helped establish Roads to Toads, which is a legendary route here in Tahoe, kind of one of those all-day epics. So it's about helping establish.
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Yeah, so Roads to Toads is you start at Mount Rose Summit and you ride the Tahoe Rim Trail all the way across around South Lake, and you finish down Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
Awesome.
And no one had really gone for it full gas on a day. So it was about kind of establishing it, promoting it, sharing the how you did it, and incentivizing others to do it. That was kind of more the impetus behind this. And then White Rim was my big competitive effort. And I went for it. And, these are just based off Strava segments, really. I mean, it's still just kind of, sportsmanship and honors your word. And when I uploaded, I had actually missed it by 16 seconds from Keegan. And I was devastated. And I was just sitting there and I was like, I can't go home yet. So I had to wait. I waited 3 days. I called my wife, said, I'm not coming home yet. I waited 3 days and did it again. And I got it by a few minutes. Since then, Keegan returned and took it by 16 seconds from me, or 6 seconds from me.
Seriously.
So it's it's a 5.5 hour time trial that comes down to a game of seconds, and you're talking about GPS error and all this crap. So I don't know if I'm ever going to go back, though. It's the point is to kind of put your name on stamp your name on that paper, and there's other cool ones. And I currently still have the Cocopelli Trail, which is 140 miles
Cool.
from Moab to Fruita, Colorado.
Nice.
Yeah.
Well, quit telling people about it. Don't tell people you
I
have
want
FKT.
everyone
Then
to
they want to
go.
go
I
get
want
it.
records are meant to be broken, and I want other people to push themselves for their own big day out there, or even try and take it. That's the point of this thing.
So you made it work in 2020. Were your sponsors happy? Were they like end of the year? It's
Yeah,
like, dude, like in spite of Earth being shut down, you did us good.
yeah. I didn't lose a sponsor in 2020. Well,
Wow.
actually, I did. I had a coffee company, and their marketing girl just didn't even understand bikes, so that went away. But everyone else stuck around or actually upped for more. They were like, they
Huh.
believed in me, and they're like, Pete's gonna hustle. He's gonna represent us. And I was still kind of, like the main talking point guy in gravel racing. So, it was we went into 2021 and racing came back online, and I had an extremely successful 2021. Won more than I lost, which is rare in this sport where you almost always lose, you know. Um, and Yeah, it was just helping establish even more than just like, it wasn't about ever selfish racing. If I wanted to just race my bike and go get like a result on a number sheet, I should have just stayed in Europe on the road. But it was about helping foster and is about helping create this discipline, this new discipline, and establishing it and legitimizing it. Um, and I'm really proud of where gravel is right now. It's definitely changed over the last few years. I mean, it's almost gone. A little bit of me is sad that it's actually almost gone back to just about a numbers sheet in a lot of races, but there's also a lot out there that is the the core community, and the reason why gravel's successful is still out there, even if a lot of the media just talks about results placings. I think that's just cyclical in cycling. It's a matter of time. Something's lucrative,
Yeah,
people
for
are just
sure.
going to come in.
Well, I mean, you kind of made it lucrative.
I
Like all those guys are watching.
Yeah, I know.
Everybody's watching, and now everybody has a freaking van, and there's sponsors on the side of it,
I
and their hashtag van life going from race to
I
race,
can totally be
and
public.
making a living, which is
I
cool.
can totally be public enemy number one, and I struggle with that internally because I came to gravel for a more relatable career, and closing off that red tape from those, in the world tour, you're on these team buses and you get out and you race and you get back on the bus and you go to the hotel, and it's not about the masses, and gravel was totally different. And so a little bit of me is feels guilty that it's gotten more performance oriented, but at the same time, I was talking with Ted King about this. If it's not me and him, it was going to be someone else. Like, it's just, this is the way the world's moving, and I just have to remember that as things morph and change, like, I have to remember for my own internal happiness why I came here. And I'm still competitive. I love racing. I want to win bike races because that's what I love doing. But it can't be at all costs anymore. And that's kind of where I draw my line. So, it's about me following my own personal journey within it. And I can't blame anyone else for doing it their way. And there's enough space the story still counts for something in gravel, a lot more than road, I would still argue. So, um, if you do it your way and you can relate on something, then you're going to be just fine in this sport. And for me, that's, there isn't any shared, or sorry, there's no more secrets. I've always made a point of sharing tips and tricks and things to ideally help the masses, whether it's fueling or tire suggestions and all of that, because it's a mass participation sport.
It is, and I feel like that's what makes it successful and different.
Hmm.
Going from crits, Cat 4, Cat 3, Cat 2, Cat 1 Pro, all racing 45 minutes at their own time. Cyclocross is like that. Mountain biking can be like that with the different categories, racing different lengths at different times. But I've always looked at Schwamigan. I'm going to use Schwamigan
Yep.
or Leadville. Mass start events, I, theoretically, you and I could line up at Leadville and I could kick your ass.
Yeah.
We're in the same race, same time,
100%.
same course. I raced with Dave Weens, Lance Armstrong, um,
Awesome. And you have that shared
Floyd,
experience. Like,
for
regardless of
sure.
your times,
Yep,
you went through the same things on the same day, and you can relate to that after the race together, you know? And
yep.
ideally, you know, the journey person rider can better appreciate the pro effort. They're like, oh my gosh, that guy did that in 6 hours when it took me eight or whatever. Like, that's insane. And post race at a beer, you know, you go through the same things, whether it's mishaps or, you know, good luck or whatever. So it's a great formula.
Yeah, I think that's the success of gravel. I always said after Schwamigan, like road racing needs this kind of format.
Yeah.
We,
Well, I can't tell you
all need to start.
how many times I've had this conversation with teammates. Like, the Tour de France, these pro road racing, pro tour road, it's intoxicating. It's so, when you're in that final sprint going, you know, 40 miles an hour and you're bumping bars and one guy's mistake is going to send you all down and it's scary and riveting. Like, you can't show that. You can't show that to everyone, and it's never been captured. And like the Netflix thing kind of started to get there and like help tell people at least, but it's like I wish there was a way to like really help people understand what it's like in there, because then I think road cycling would become way more popular. The danger factor, it's all of it, right? The intensity, and it just hasn't. There's no way to share that experience of a sprinting on stage one of the tour with everyone's nerves on an edge. You know?
You cannot replicate that
No,
for the masses.
no, and it's a
I mean,
shame.
you can replicate riding on the same roads. We can all ride the Paris-Roubaix route, but it's it's very like road racing. When you're dropped, you're off.
Right,
Like end of your day, see ya.
right.
The race goes up the road. But gravel, it's like I don't care what you're doing up front. I'm getting through this bit myself.
There's
I'm climbing these hills into the
It's
wind.
still an adventure, no matter where you are. You
Yep,
know, that's what's really fun about it, for sure.
yep. So how do you feel about the evolution of gravel? I used to sign up for actually I'll go back far enough to say that we hated gravel and would avoid it like the plague. But then we signed up for the freaking Trans Iowa. We sent a postcard to Guitar Ted and begged to
Yep,
let us
yep.
in. And it was free, and you got a cue card at the start line, and you found your way through the state to now the Gravel National Championships, the Gravel World Championships, which is almost a whole nother thing.
Mm-hmm.
Lifetime Grand Prix is such a huge
Yeah,
piece of American cycling right now.
yeah.
What's your vision of where gravel has come from and where it is today?
Oh, it's such a loaded question. I mean,
Sorry.
it's yeah. I've struggled with it, to be brutally honest. You know, I've seen it morph and change, and as we almost, you know, said a few minutes ago, like I feel a little bit guilty when I am down on it sometimes. You know, I had a Velo News piece I put out there. You know, another one of my side projects, making it work, and as I said, the proification of gravel is complete, and I do see, blame myself, blame the Lifetime Grand Prix, blame the industry for telling racers to just focus on racing the bike and they'll take care of the rest. Blame the riders who wanted the World Tour contract but never got it, and now they have a platform to not worry about a team manager or getting the right contact and showcasing their talent. But whatever it is, like, I see that gap widening now. Like that shared experience. It's within the race. It's a very different formula. I mean, it's the racing in the front has become so streamlined and high performance and high octane that I have consciously gotten pulled into my old pro ways and then had to mentally wrench myself back out and then pulled in and wrenched out. And for me, it's a balancing act. And the way I found internal harmony was creating a calendar that balances both. Because as I said, I still love racing. Like I want to race. I'm still competitive. I'm mid 30s. I'm still in my prime for another season or two. I'm 36 now, so I want to keep racing, and I don't want to waste that right now. So I need to balance my calendar with the elite races, the Grand Prix, the national championships, all these things. Not the UCI Worlds, because I am very against it politically still. But oh
Really?
yeah, I did not apply to go. But I need to do these A-list races where the result matters, because that's where pop culture and the industry is gone. But then there's all these other races where it's still just the experience, and that communal gathering is the most powerful and important part, and the race is almost secondary. And I feel like if I can balance the calendar, I can kind of, I know it sounds hippie, but I can fill my cup with good vibes at those races, and then I can show up knowing that I don't have to feel like I need to fit everything in, and at certain races just be like, all right, it's business time. Like, you want to play the racing game? I can play the racing game. I know how to do this. And so I'm trying to do that balance throughout the season.
I 100% understand. Schwamigan for us is a weekend event.
Mm-hmm.
The race is there. We do the race. We enjoy the race. We love the whole scene. We love trying to get up Fire Tower, and but it's a whole weekend. Like, we love Friday, Saturday, Sunday in the North Woods. Our friends, beers, the food, the lakes, the whole
Yes.
scene. And I'm sure for you, it's a very different experience. It's like you get there, you get to the freaking starting line at 1, gun goes off for 2 hours, pedal to the metal, and uh, finish line.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's a very different experience, but I can relate to the need to go to a low key gravel event where you can go out and who cares what place you get. It's not about, I'm sure you're still, all of us pin a number on, and it's like, I want to do as well as I can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? But
And that's the thing. As long as
but
you're,
that's not the most important part of that weekend for you.
no,
The weekend is the most important part.
exactly. For me, it is, and it always will be. I just need to be okay with the fact that, knowing that, maybe socializing a little harder than I should is going to be a slight detriment to my performance. And if I'm okay with that, and if I'm not okay with that, I need to maybe be a little bit more selfish at times. Um, Shawmigan was actually more of a relaxed environment for me. I see what you guys are doing
Really?
up there, and I am bummed about the separate start. That's frustrating, because I see the start downtown, and that's amazing. Instead of, we just start by ourselves hours later and sprint up a grass hill. And I mean, and that's where you and
Right.
I met, is, and that's where you're seeing this division right now, is you see a few of us, elite riders. We met the day before, hanging out at the expo. And I was hanging out at Servant. Was it the day before that we met, or the day after?
It was the day
It
before,
was,
yeah.
yeah. And serving pie at Orange Seal and just enjoying it, and had a beer the night before the race, but just one, with Big Tall Wayne, my mechanic. And we had this great little Airbnb on a lake up there, and we really just absorbed it. And there's other pros where you don't even see them the whole weekend, like they want to show
Yep.
up, they want to race, they want to go home. And that's fine, though, because who am I to say that that's the wrong way of doing it? It's just not the right way for me at this point in my life. Um,
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's races where you are all
a hundred
business.
percent. Yep. And Gravel Nationals was one of those. There wasn't much going on in Gehring, to be honest. I got my number. There wasn't much of an expo, because it was kind of thrown together pretty quick by USA Cycling, to be honest. It was a kind of a late thing. And so, I kind of walked around the expo for a minute with Wayne, and it was like, the only pull here is the lure of a national championship. I mean, That's right now it's USA Cycling's brand, and I know they're trying to change that, but like everyone here is just riding for the stars and stripes in their category. Otherwise, why would you come to this event? There isn't a party, there isn't an expo yet. And so that was one where I was like, all right, Wayne, I'm going to do a recon ride and we're going to go back to the hotel and you work on the bike and I'm going to stretch and put my legs up, you know?
Is there a future for that race?
I think so. I think it was really successful this year. It got a lot of media, a lot of pros attended it. I think had they tried to pull it off a few years ago, it was boycotted a few years ago. You know, it just never could get the footing. But that's just this changing landscape. And as I said, the proification of gravel is now you can make a living not doing the same hustle that myself and Ted and Payson do. You can just be a bike racer. Cut and dry, which is it's fine. You know, that's just the evolution of something.
How important is a lifetime Grand Prix in that evolution?
I think you can, just like me. I think we share a trajectory in that you can also you can blame us or you can congratulate us on the change. You know, like depending on what side of the hill you're on.
Right.
You know, the Grand Prix wants to create more fandom, have a high profile race series in America again, which is awesome. And I agree with all of that. At the same time, the money, the prestige has forced racers to only worry about their results and less about all the other things at these races because it's all riding on results at these races for us. So it's a balancing act with those guys. I mean, I know like Lifetime, they make their money off mass start events. Schwamigan, Leadville, Unbound, like it's about the 99% of them for their bottom line, but they also have this like elite thing, which is, yeah, it just comes down to your personal view on the whole thing, I think.
Well, doesn't that elite thing make the 99% want to be a part of that race?
I don't know.
Even though we're not going to beat you. Like going to the New York Marathon or Chicago Marathon or London Marathon where the best runners in the world are going to compete and we start a mile behind them in the 35,000 strong. But we're still in that race knowing that the fastest people in the world are up front.
Well, I hope so because that's how I make my living right now. So, to be brutally honest, I hope that motivates you because I do think that's still the best way to validate a product. You know, I think, you know, gravel especially, you know, it's so rough on your equipment. The fueling is hard with these survival courses and rationing your nutrition throughout a long day and your tires and sealant and all of it, right? Like, I think if I can help validate a product so you can have better success on your event that we're lining up at together, job done. And then my sponsors are happy, you know? So I do think that magic recipe for me is doing well enough, you know, so internally, I want to win the bike races. Like, I like doing that. I'm competitive. Logically, represent, if I can win a few, great. Always be a part of the conversation. Show that the product you are using is good, it's fast, it's proficient. And then beyond that, I do think being friendly and public and creating a good experience for a potential consumer for a brand is more valuable. You know? And that's the marketing stuff that I learned in all through the pandemic.
In your privateer MBA.
Exactly.
I appreciate that. You'll take that far. Okay, let's do some business. Pay Dirt. Tell me about Pay Dirt.
Pay Dirt is my own gravel race that I organize. It's in Carson City, Nevada. During my time with Trek, to give back to the community, to raise funds for life-altering injuries such as my dad's brain injury, my broken leg, I created a road fondo out of Tahoe where I reside part-time. The riding is phenomenal here, world class. As I transitioned to gravel, I started dropping down into the Nevada basin and exploring more and deeper. And it's wild and rugged and remote. And I linked up with a buddy and we created Stetina's Pay Dirt. It's a gravel race, but there's no sanctioning, there's no rules in gravel. So we could just do what we wanted. And I decided to make things different. I wanted it to just be a version of the best day on a bike I could think of, and so it's not just a race. It's, how do you really get the most enjoyment out of a good day on the bike? It's that shared experience. It's good post-race food and beers. It's all the parts, right? And so we have a really nice route. It's not a crazy 200-mile route. It's not too short. It's just right in that middle zone. It's going to challenge you, but it's not the hardest thing. And then I started twisting with it. I decided to, in road racing, you always have time bonus sprints, right? On top of a mountain, or bonus sprints in the tour. And so I said, instead of bonus sprints, like, we're going to kind of lean into the Nevada thing, the mining, the cowboy stuff. So we have these games back at the Finish Expo. We have a mechanical bowl. We have a tire toss, like a lasso game with IRC tires. And however many seconds you stay on the bowl, that's your bonus second. So if you come out to my race, Dave, and you and your buddy come out and you cross the line together, you can ride the bull to see actually who sits higher in the results sheet. You can knock time off. Tire toss is the same. 20 seconds for the furthest one, 10 and 5 seconds for the closest one. Custom beer that I partnered with a brewery because, as we talked about, I'm a beer geek. So I've got my own beer for the event. And then within the ride itself, we went with time segments because that's how we ride. Oh, Siri just turned on for me. I don't know what I said. That's how we ride. Like, you rip a trail or a climb or something, and then you kind of stop and you regroup and you set off together. So we kind of made that into the event. It's like an enduro for mountain biking, but we have uphill and downhill, flat, technical. Like, it's not just climbing, it's not just downhill like mountain bike enduro. So you ride over the timing mat. It takes a lot more timing logistics, but my partner is great with that. I partner with a company that does events. And you're on the clock. But when you cross that timing mat after the segment, you're off. You can wait an hour or you can go immediately. It doesn't matter. So, we have a massive picnic in the middle of the course with hot dogs and all of that stuff. And so you just do you. And for those that are competing, that's a whole nother tactic that's interesting because we do champion the women's race. The women to put a stamp on on parity and equality in sport. Like, we really highlight the women's race and give them a proper prize purse, and got some of the best ladies out there this year. It was a wild battle that actually came down to the bonus tire toss. It was insane.
No
Yeah.
way.
Yeah, second place leapfrog,
Wow.
first place with a 20-second
Wow.
ringer. It was nuts. After all the time segments were accumulated, Heather Jackson was 16 seconds behind Sarah Sturm, and Heather threw a 20-second ringer on the tire toss, and Sarah didn't. And there was a little bit of drama because Sarah was like, "Wait, you mean I was the fastest rider, but I didn't win?" So, but those are
That's crazy.
Those are the house rules. It was a wild time. And so the whole
Mr. Toad's Wild Ride.
and the whole tactic around that, right? Like, if you finish, do you want to leave early after a time segment and kind of have a clean run at trail, or do you want to leave in a group and benefit off drafting and stuff? So there's a whole nother tactic that if you are going to really race, you can start implementing. So we're having a lot of fun with it, and it's next May 18th.
I love your creativity.
Thank you.
I love the uniqueness.
I mean, it's a mass rollout, like neutral rollout to the first time segment. So it is a mass start event. And then once we hit the first time segment, it just blows to smithereens after like 10 miles or something.
Sure.
And we do have course cutoff times to make sure that you can finish safely. Um, but the overall scoring is basically just cumulative, all 3 time segments lumped together. So, I think Sarah, with the fastest female split, she rode, I think the whole ride took her 4 hours, but her time in like the results was like 2.5 or something like that.
Huh, that's pretty cool. I love that idea. And you're right, that does make it a kind of a timing challenge. But if you've got somebody who's good at that,
Yep.
that's a great way to do a race and enjoy the race and enjoy the day. My wife and I just did Gravel Worlds, the 78 mile.
Good people out there.
I'm getting full credit.
Jason and Corey
Great
are
people
awesome.
out there. Yeah, for sure. But it was, I mean, you're on. My wife's like, oh, that was so pretty. Like, I really loved the countryside. And I'm like, what countryside? Like, I never looked around once because I was driving the whole time. It was muddy and soft and like you really had to pick your line. And I didn't want to kill her. So I was driving the whole time. I really didn't look around at all. But this way, you can just soft pedal, relax, enjoy each other's company in between segments. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you can, I mean,
I like that.
do have this pipe dream if with more sponsorship, we actually just have sponsors start owning segments. So if you just want to rip one segment, maybe you can win a Wahoo GPS computer or something like that, but at the same time too, it's like the pros will probably win all the segments and the overall. So we actually do some individual prizes just for like the best bull ride and stuff.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Well-rounded athlete.
So who take?
That's what...
Yeah, right, right. That would be very. And with the tire toss, like well-rounded athlete with skills.
Exactly, hand-eye coordination, which none of us bike racers have.
Correct. That's why we're not in ball sports.
Exactly.
Who's taking care of you?
Taking care of me? My wife.
Brag about your sponsors.
Oh, my wife.
Brag about your wife and your children, for sure.
I must apologize to my wife because she thought I was coming back for a half-retired sport in gravel, and now I'm traveling just as much. But for me, I'm like, oh, what do you mean I'm stateside? I'm home. I'm not in Europe. So she's putting up with it, and she sees how much fun I'm having. So thanks to her. My biggest caretaker is Big Tall Wayne, my mechanic. He is one of my best friends, my beer drinking buddy in Tahoe. It happens to be one of the best mechanics I've ever met. So as I went down this path, I said, you want to do this with me? And he said, hell yeah. So I do, in a bougie looking way, travel with my own personal mechanic, but it's really just, I want to go to all this rad stuff with one of my best buddies. And he happens to really like wrenching on bikes, and I happen to like racing really fast, clean bikes. So we just,
it's a good combination.
We just do this thing together. And, I've made sure to, his dream is to be a pro mechanic. That's his dream career, like mine is pro racing. So we just kind of have this natural fit together, and I've been able to go to my sponsors and be like, I got to pay Wayne too. Like, you got to kick in for this. Like, we are a team. So it's me and Wayne. And the folks that really believe in that is Canyon, Cliff Bar, The Feed, Shimano, Orange Seal, Sportful Clothing, IRC Tires. I know I'm forgetting someone, and I feel so bad about it, but I got about Athletic Brewing is fun. Storyteller Overland, my big fancy van. It's so amazing, actually, that gravel is in this space right now where non-endemic sponsors such as breweries and vans are like, we see advertising value in this. Like, that's like mountain biking with Subaru in the 90s, like we're at that moment right now. So I really like chasing those golden eggs of the non-endemic sponsor. I think that's really fun. It's like a stamp of like real success. Got to get you like United Airlines or something. If anyone listening has a contact, that would be sweet.
What is it? The Rad is this weekend.
It is.
followed by Big Sugar in the Lifetime Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
You moving up any spots here in the next two races?
I mean, I hope so. I did give a good effort this year. I had some stuff go wrong at Leadville that I don't want to get into, but normally that's one of my good scoring races. So that was a bummer, meaning I've dropped in the races. So I really need to bring it in the next two races. Luckily, those are gravel races, which is my specialty. No more of these flat bar wide tire things. So yeah, I'm really excited for both of the Rad and Big Sugar. And as I talked about that homeostasis and that harmony, right in between those two, I am doing a race called the Rexy, which is 200 miles from Moab to Fruita, Colorado. Basically parallels the Kokopelli Trail, but on gravel. Total low-key event. I think there's 300 people signed up maximum. You can do it as a team and stuff. So I'm going to do a big old 200-mile gravel grind in the middle that I'm actually really excited for. So.
Huh, sounds super cool. It's a beautiful area.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful area. Shoot, man, good luck. People can follow you on the gram. What else you got?
Website, the gram, the Strava. I try hard on the Strava. I like that one. It's bike racers looking at bike racers, or bike riders looking at bike riders. So, yeah, if you want to kind of see the places I ride and what I get into, that one's a fun one as well.
Dig it. And head on out to Carson City, Nevada, May 18th for the Pay Dirt.
I hope you can make it.
All right, man. Listen, I truly appreciate your time.
Likewise.
And I wish you the best of luck as the season winds down.
Thanks for the chat.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that conversation with Peter Stetina. I really appreciate him carving out the time to chat with me. Still in the middle of a freaking huge schedule. Honestly, these guys, all of them. I remember talking to Lance Haydad at Schwamigan, and I'm like, oh, got to be winding down. Only 2 more Lifetime races. And he's like, yeah, and there's cross, and there's this, and there's that, and there's this, and there's that. And all of these guys do so much. And again, I completely appreciate Peter taking the time out of his day to chat with us on Bike Talk with Dave. What an awesome dude. I love talking to him and catching up about his dad and his uncle, and those guys literally laid the foundation for what we have today in cycling. And I appreciate their time on a bike and his efforts on the bike as well. Wish him all the best as this season winds down and he enjoys a little time at home with his wife and kids. Well, I want to thank you for tuning in to Bike Talk with Dave as well. I would love it if you would help the show out by rating, reviewing, and subscribing. And honestly, if you really love it, throw a few cents into the cup. Look for Bike Talk with Dave at buymeacoffee.com. If you do, I will send you a Bike Talk with Dave sticker. How awesome is that? Don't forget, Bike Talk with Dave is available on YouTube. If you take your podcasts that way, that's awesome. And every episode is available for streaming on your home computer, work computer, wherever you want at biketalk.bike. Thanks tons again for tuning in. And remember that nothing compares to the simple pleasure of riding a bicycle.